Namaste. I have a very special guest today, Meenakshi Jain, a person I have known for 2 decades. I haven't been in contact with you for many years now, and I thought it's a good time to catch up.
Thank you.
I regard her as one of the best scholars in history and political matters concerning India, and we have one thing in common. We both have critiqued the work of leftist people in India.
Yes.
And they either fight us or ignore us or call us names and so on. So we'll compare notes on that later on. But first I just wanted to say welcome. This is a good opportunity, and from now on we should stay in touch more often.
Thank you.
So you were a professor of physics, professor history and political science in Delhi University.
Yeah. I was a reader.
Okay, reader. So during the era of the left, that is the whole Irfan Habib and Romila Thapar, these kind of people. So how did you feel about that era in terms of the prevailing, scholarship that was popular at that time?
See, their stranglehold on Indian academia was really complete. They controlled all the funding agencies, and all the students who want to do research had to do research under them and from their point of view. So it was very difficult for a person who did not share their ideology or way of thinking to make a mark as a historian or as a scholar. As I said, all the funding agencies were under their control. So if you wanted to chart out your own path, it was a very lonely path, and you were just on your own.
So is Indira Gandhi one who caused all this? When did this happen?
Actually, this started when the Congress party became a minority government.
And they needed coalition partners, CPI.
And they chose the CPI.
Yeah.
And the left is very astute as far as furthering their ideological position is concerned. So they asked for one ministry, and that was the education ministry. And probably the Congress did not realize the importance of this ministry, or they endorsed the viewpoint of the left on Indian history, and so this ministry was handed over to Professor Noor Hassan. So the first thing that Noor Hassan did with his team was to block out or delegitimize, let me put it like that, eminent historians. I mean, right is not the right word, but who were non-left.
So, give me examples of who they.
So there was R.C. Majumdar, Jadunath Sarkar. Now, Jadunath Sarkar had done a fantastic empirical study of the Mughal Empire, and facts speak for themselves. So the left, they tried to belittle his view of Indian history, and you will be surprised to know that recently a biography of Jadunath Sarkar has been written, and in that biography, the scholar, he is astonished to note that Irfan Habib, in his book Agrarian System of Mughal India, does not refer to Jadunath Sarkar even once. So this is a kind of
completely sort of ignoring, otherwise they have to deal
you just wipe people out of the pages of history.
So was Noor Hussain from CPI? Or he was just
he was a
leftist person, maybe not a party member?
No, he was a card holding member.
He was a card holding member.
Yes, according to what I know.
So then but you survived. I mean, you managed to.
I survived for the simple reason that I didn't want any patronage from anyone. I was not looking for a job. I had a small job which was enough to see me through.
Was it easy though to get your papers in?
No, but I never tried. I never tried because getting my books published was such a headache. Every book of mine, I think I've made a notable contribution to the subjects on which I've written. But every book of mine was rejected by every publisher because the manuscript would go to left scholars.
This is the thing. People don't realize it. I know this. So no matter which publisher you go to, they have to give it for reviews.
Yes.
And the people who are known to be important, whether they are good scholars or not, tend to be these kind of people. And so the review goes to such a person and they kill the book.
And for example, one book that was a very detailed study on Hindu-Muslim relations in the medieval period, that was sent to a reviewer, and the reviewer said this is a very serious work and it takes note of everything that has been written on the subject, but I would advise a publisher to write, it is a Hindu view of Hindu-Muslim relations. So naturally the publisher got frightened and he said, I'm very sorry, but I cannot publish it because it says Hindu view.
So who are the main publishers at the time? Must be Oxford University Press?
Well, I don't want to name anybody,
Okay, all right.
but I tried 4 publishers for 4 books, and every person who the book manuscript was sent to said it's a very serious work, but it portrays just one point of view. So it was rejected. In fact, on Ayodhya, my manuscript was rejected by 4 publishing houses, and it was only the intervention of Indian archaeologists who have been so actively involved in excavating that site. They actually saw it through.
So tell me now, what are the books you are doing now in recent years?
The books that I'm doing, they are already out. I've done a 3-volume study on the travelers to India, the India they saw. It's an account of foreign travelers to India
Which
from
period?
the mid-8th to the mid-19th century.
And where did they come from?
They came from Europe, they came from China, Far East, and the Muslim world. Many of them in the from the 10th century onward, there were a lot of Arab writers, Persian writers. So it's a whole gamut of.
And the sources are where?
The sources are mostly I was able to tap the works that had been translated into English.
Are they lying in India or somewhere else?
They're all over.
All over.
They're all over.
So you have to go collect from various libraries.
Yes.
Very interesting. And what would surprise people, or what is startling, new, exciting?
What would surprise people is that almost all accounts were full of awe at what they saw in India. The economic, the vitality, the place of women in society was a real eye-opener to these people. And in fact, one Italian nobleman, his name was Petra della Vella, he came to India and he came first to the south. And when he came to the south, he had a dubash. Dubash means a person who interprets for him. So he had come from Iran, where he had interviewed the Shah of Iran. And after coming from Iran, he came to South India, where the matrilineal society was prevalent. And he says, he goes to a village and he says, I want to see the ruler of this village, this area. So they say the ruler is a woman and she is not at home right now. She has gone to her field because she is supervising the digging of a trench. So he goes to that field and there he sees this woman coming along, and he writes over there, she is dressed like a kitchen maid and no slippers. And he says, when I started talking to her, I found her as wise as the Shah of Iran, whom I had interviewed some time back. And the questions that she asks him and the awareness. And so this representation that we get of women, especially in South India, it's an eye-opener. So many things they write about the caste system, which is very different from the way we interpret the caste system. And if I can give one example, there was an English collector in Madras. And in those days, we had,
what period?
This is the 18th century.
Okay.
So this the earlier account was about 1760. This is the 18th century. So there is this English collector of Madras. He wants to go from Madras to another village, which is a few hundred miles away. And so he has the Brahmins, he has people, palki bearers. He will sit on the palki because he didn't want to go horse riding all that distance. So he sits on the palki and the palki bearers take him to that village. When he arrives at that village, the palki bearers are full of mud from top to bottom. And he gets off the palki and he's surprised that nobody in the village is even looking at him. He is the collector. And everybody is doing pranam to the palki bearers. And then he realizes that these palki bearers are Brahmins, the traditional custodians of Indian tradition and knowledge system, and how much reverence they arouse in society, even though now political power or no power is in their hand. So these are very, very interesting instances that I came to.
I have a copy of your volumes, by the way. I haven't read it, I just got it.
You cannot read it at one go, it's like a dictionary.
So things that will startle people should be the subject of some kind of a panel, some kind of a conference on what we learn from original sources of foreign travelers, unfiltered through any ideological scholars. What are some of the discoveries we make this way, which will surprise people?
Absolutely.
Because it will contradict what we think today.
Yes.
I think this should be a topic.
This is an eye-opener.
I would like to. We'll do something like this together.
Yes.
Okay, that's a good one. So then you also you're known for Ayodhya work.
Yes.
So Now that's a very controversial subject, and it takes courage to take on that. You've done very well. So tell me your work, what it reveals.
See, actually, I did not know anything about the Ayodhya dispute. I just had an emotional reaction to the controversy when it broke out. I started studying this subject sometime after the Allahabad High Court delivered its judgment. Soon after that, somebody gave me a pamphlet which was published by the Aligarh Historians Forum. It was mainly written by Irfan Habib. And that booklet was a total indictment of the Allahabad High Court judgment.
Irfan Habib, for those who don't know, is one of the preeminent leftist scholars,
yes,
who's devastated and tried to discard and dismiss and reject every Hindu point of view, or I would say the true point of view.
But on
with a very slanted ideological.
Yeah, but I would just like to say something on Ayodhya. So when I read this, he said that the Supreme Court is going to overturn this judgment. I said, my goodness, is it possible for a court in India to give such a faulty judgment? That compelled me to read the 5,000-page judgment. And when I read the judgment, it was a real eye-opener for me. But what I want to say on Ayodhya, every point that was, trumpeted by left historians was found to be faulty.
By the court? By
me and by the court also.
Okay.
By the court, obviously the court did not accept their point of view.
So give me some major things they said which are wrong.
All right. So I'll just, I can give many examples. But just for the view of the readers, they said that the Ayodhya dispute was manufactured by the British in the 19th century as part of their policy of divide and rule. And they said that there is no evidence of any temple at that site before that. And they said Ram worship itself was a very late phenomena. It was an 18th, 19th century affair. Now, it is one of those ironies of history that documents that were wholly discrediting the left point of view had survived by chance in the Faizabad district court. Because the British started ruling over Awadh in 1858 after the Great Mutiny. So from 1858 onwards, all disputes on Ayodhya, the record was kept in the Faizabad district court. And it's amazing that those documents survived unharmed for 150 years. So the first document which we have from Ayodhya is 1858. It is an FIR filed by the Thanedar of Awadh. And this Thanedar is filing an FIR that 25 Sikhs have got into Babri Masjid and they've started Havan and Puja. So this one paper, small little paper, it has survived from 1858 till 2000 whatever. Then immediately 2 days later, the Muttawalli, that is the superintendent of Babri Masjid, he also files a case in the Faizabad court in which he says that these Sikhs have entered and they are doing Havan and Puja, and with koila, charcoal, they have written Ram Ram all over the walls of the masjid. And he also says that before this incident, the Hindus were already in control of the compound of Babri Masjid, which they regarded as Janam Sthan, and they were already there. That was already in their possession, but now the inside area and the outside area, both the areas are open to them. So the Allahabad High Court regarded this as a very important fact bearing on the case, that there is a Muslim source which says that from 1858 the Hindus are inside and outside the court.
Excellent. So what else was, so this is a big defeat for the left.
Yes. So from 1858 till 1949, till the idol was placed inside the Babri Masjid, there are so many court cases where the Hindus and Muslims are fighting. And I'll just give you one example. I think it's in 1888 that the Babri Masjid Matawalli, he files a case in court and he says that up till now, at the time of Ram Navami and Kartik Mela, the Hindus used to set up shops, prasad shops, flower shops, fruit shops inside Babri Masjid, because so many people would come and they'd make a sale, and the agreement was that we would share the proceeds of the sale between the Babri Masjid.
What year is that?
About 1888.
Okay.
The exact year is there in my book. So he said this year, the Mahants of the Janam Sthan, they have unilaterally changed the sharing basis without consulting us. So please, he tells the British authorities, please reinstate the old sharing basis, that is 50-50.
So these are some very startling things. So what do the Muslim sources say?
Now, there are two recent works that have been published which people interested in the Ayodhya dispute should be aware of. One is the autobiography of K.K. Muhammad. He was an archaeologist with the ASI, and he has said that there was a very serious thinking among the Muslims that let us hand over this site. When the controversy broke out.
Okay.
Around 1989.
That controversy, not the recent. Okay.
1989.
Right. Okay.
When the
1989. Okay.
So he said there was a strong thinking among the Muslims that let us hand over this site to the Hindus because it's of so much significance to them. But he says that a group of left historians convinced them that you have a very strong case, don't.
So it's the leftists who created a rift between Hindus and Muslims,
and he says,
because they were ready to sort it out.
Yes, and he says that they prevented an amicable solution to this problem. The other account that has been published recently is by Kishore Kunal. He was the officer on special duty under the Prime Ministers VP Singh and Chandrasekhar. And he has also provided a lot of inside account of how the left misled on so many issues. But going back to the medieval sources, there is no medieval source that either the left has been able to cite or I have been able to find which says that Babri Masjid was built on virgin land. All medieval sources very honestly and candidly admit that the Ram Temple was demolished and a masjid erected on that site. References to Ayodhya as the Janam Bhumi of Ram are there in so many Persian sources.
Persian sources?
Yes.
What era? What period roughly?
Beginning from Abul Fazl, that is 16th century. So Abul Fazl also writes that Ayodhya is sacred because it is the holy place of the birth of Ram. Then in 1600, Akbar had given some 6 bighas of land to Hanuman Tila to build whatever they wanted to build there. That grant had to be renewed in about 1723. So the scribe who has to write that renewal of the grant, he writes that this grant is being renewed, it was given by Akbar and now it is being renewed, and I, the scribe of this grant, am writing this from the Janam Bhumi of Ram. This is a Persian document which says that he is writing it from the Janam Bhumi of Ram. Then the Mutawalli of Babri Masjid, who I mentioned earlier, he sends 2 petitions to the British. In both the petitions, he says Masjid-e-Janam Sthan. So he says, I am the Mutawalli of Masjid-e-Janam Sthan. So why should Masjid have the name Janam Sthan?
Right.
And then there are so many accounts, histories that were written by Muslims in the 18th century, which all refer to this. And there is another, this is not a Muslim account, but if I can just mention it. There was a report written by Muhammad Shoaib, I think his name is, and he wrote on the inscriptions that he found in Babri Masjid. And he mentions 3 inscriptions, and he says that one inscription said that this masjid is built on the site of a Ram temple. Now,
over there it says that.
Yeah, but the point is nobody else has seen that inscription. So when was it removed? And why was this report not made public for 100 years?
Right. Now you said there's also a controversy about one inscription,
yes,
which the left says was fraudulently placed and all that. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So on 6 December 1992, when Babri Masjid was demolished, a big inscription 5 feet by 2 feet was recovered from the walls of the masjid. And that inscription was deciphered on the court orders, on the Allahabad High Court orders, by the epigraphy department of ASI. And that inscription said this is a Vishnu Hari temple, and it gave all the details of the temple, who built it, when it was built. So this was clinching proof, if you wanted clinching proof, that the temple was there. But left historians, and especially Irfan Habib, they said this inscription was not recovered from the debris of Babri Masjid. They said that actually this inscription, which we call Vishnu Hari inscription, was stolen from Lucknow Museum and planted over there. So the legitimate question that arises is that at that time there were thousands of people over there, and there was the media. How was it possible to bring in that inscription? And when was it stolen from Lucknow Museum? So all this time, Professor Habib has been insisting that this inscription was stolen from Lucknow Museum. But what has happened now is that Kishore Kunal, being a very influential person in the PMO, he actually reached Lucknow Museum and he got a photograph of that inscription. And he also managed to see the diary entries of Lucknow Museum, which said that this inscription was placed in Lucknow Museum in 1953, and it describes the inscription. So this inscription's photograph, which is there in Lucknow Museum, is actually the inscription from another temple, that is the Tretaka Thakur temple.
And so therefore it does not match this.
So it doesn't match at all. But the point is that one would imagine that after such a development, the left historians would immediately respond to this.
Right.
Because for 2 decades you have been saying that the Vishnu Hari inscription is a plant and is stolen. But now when evidence has been produced which shows that it was not stolen, you should respond. But my own experience is that all the facts that I have been able to look at, every one of those facts negates the viewpoint of left historians. But they have never responded to these developments.
So they just ignore.
They kill by silence. In my book, my book is very, very critical of the left historians. I have one chapter which takes excerpts from their depositions in Allahabad High Court. And they show that these people were totally ignorant of even the basics of history. So, I mean, if anyone would be really embarrassed if this was such an exposure of them.
So, is Irfan Habib, because his name comes up, is he the main culprit or is the whole gang of them?
See, the 4 people, Irfan Habib, R.S. Sharma, Romila Thapar, D.N. Jha, Suraj Bhan and Mandal. These are the 6 people who were in the forefront. Most of them have passed away. Irfan Habib, Romila Thapar, D.N. Jha, they are around. But what I feel is that Irfan Habib still remains the most active.
Excellent. Now you also did some work on Sati.
Yeah.
So tell us.
Can I just say something more about this?
Yes, please.
What is the redeeming feature?
Okay.
In this situation is, according to me, that the next generation of left historians does not have the stomach for this kind of fight. So they are focusing their research on non-controversial issues. So in a fundamental sense, I feel that the battle is actually won.
But not in the terms of the actual physical site.
No, not the physical site, but there will be no one among the next generation who has the tenacity.
Among the scholar types. But now the communities are, it's become a prestige issue. And it's a matter of face saving.
Yes. But I'm saying among academics, the next generation doesn't have the tenacity and the courage of people like Irfan Habib, R.S. Sharma and Romila Thapar to carry this ideological battle forward. They want to play it safe. That is my reading of the situation.
So, yeah, now the thing is the scholars have done their mischief.
Yes.
And they've turned into a fight with the communities.
Yes.
And now even though they fade away, the communities are not going to be able to move past it quickly.
Yes, because they have aroused too many passions.
Yeah, and it's a political issue, they'll lose vote and whatnot. And all that. So tell us about the Sati book you've done. Yeah,
that is a very interesting book. And everyone has heard of Sati. You don't have to explain what is Sati, because it's drilled into our minds that one of the social reforms of Lord William Bentinck is the abolition of Sati. When I began to study the subject, I looked for inscriptional evidence of sati, sculptural evidence of sati, and eyewitness accounts of sati. So the first eyewitness account of sati is when Alexander the Great was returning back home.
He's not great, by the way.
Alexander
Alexander the Greek.
Oh, Alexander the Greek. So I stand corrected.
Yeah.
So when he was returning home, then one of his contingents had an Indian general, Shashigupt. Shashigupt died, and then suddenly the Greek soldiers are astonished to see that his two widows come, and they're fighting among themselves about who should immolate with him. That is the first recorded eyewitness account of sati. After that, the next evidence which I was able to see is the 5th century AD from Madhya Pradesh and Ibn Battuta. So the actual instances of sati where people say we saw it were very few. But what happens in the, when the new route to India is discovered by Vasco da Gama, and a lot of foreign travelers start coming to India, and they start writing about India because there's a demand in Europe to know about India. So they write travel logs, and they feel that sati is one of the exotic practices of India, so we must include that in our accounts. But when you examine the accounts of these European travelers, they write in the same words, they reproduce each other's account, and the actual number who has seen those instances of sati is very few. And you're not able to tell which area of India.
So the whole myth is created.
But it was all very reasonable, within reasonable limits. Suddenly, what happens in the 18th, 19th century, the situation changes. The East India Company, they become masters of Bengal. And they are very clear that they have come to India to make money, not to spread, civilization. So at that time, the missionaries, they are not allowed to enter British territory. And if you come, then you're sent back on the next ship. So the British, the missionaries, they want to tell Parliament that, India is a land of evil customs.
Yeah, we are needed to save
and they're very much needed over there.
Yeah.
So they concoct figures of thousands, 50,000, 1 lakh women.
All sorts of things, yeah.
Immolating. But the interesting thing is that these accounts only come from Bengal. And Bengal does not have a tradition of sati.
Which is in Rajasthan.
Sati and Johar are basically in Rajasthan.
So the actual empirical evidence would show it's in Rajasthan, but the people, British in Bengal, were making it up.
Yeah, and I just want to say that after independence, there have been about 40 cases of sati, around 40 cases.
In where?
In India.
All over India.
All over India, and 2/3 of them are in Rajasthan and none in Bengal. So, it is amazing that we are supposed to believe that the moment Bentinck abolished sati by a stroke of a pen, from next day in Bengal, sati stopped.
See, I want my viewers to understand, a lot of people think that all this colonization was about Christianity. That is absolutely false. East India Company did not want Christian missionaries to come and interfere with their cash cow.
Yes.
They didn't want the missionaries to come and disrupt this huge money machine that they had created in India. So actually the East India Company was against the missionaries. There was a clash between them, and in the British Parliament they were taking opposite sides. East India Company always arguing that if the missionaries come, there may be a revolt or something and it will disrupt the cash flow.
Yes.
The missionaries had to then argue that we are needed because there is some savagery going on.
Yeah.
Right?
And in fact, the early officials of the East India Company, when they came to India, they were full of admiration of the Indian customs and institutions.
Right.
And in fact, they said that, we should not bring in British institutions in India. Their institutions are neglected, they need to be revived, but they are understood by the people and they're best for them.
Because they wanted to basically just mint money and let the society continue and not bother.
But that was one point. But there was a deep appreciation of Indian civilization before the coming of Islam.
But then Macaulay changed it.
Yes.
Early 1800, 1820s.
There was a
30s.
group, the Anglicists.
Yeah, but even there it's very interesting. Before the famous Macaulay Minute, it was Ram Mohan Roy. I don't know why they call him Raja. I guess he was a sellout to the British. So maybe but I consider him a villain in my eyes. Ram Mohan Roy writes to the British that he wants the benefit to them to bring British education to upgrade India. So this whole idea of bringing English and British style education and getting rid of our own system was something that he initiated. And then comes the Macaulay Minute.
And the British in Parliament, in fact, Edwin Burke, he said that we cannot take the oak from the banks of the Thames River and plant it along the Ganga.
Right.
So, you know, their institutions are serving their needs very well.
Right.
So let us revive those institutions.
Right.
So the very strong group in the British Parliament and among the British officials in India saying that we should restore their institutions.
And it's also very interesting, the conservatives were interested in leaving it alone.
Yes.
It's the liberals who
Yes.
wanted to mess with it.
Yes,
we
absolutely.
think that the liberals are more easy to deal with and they are on our side and all that, but actually it's the liberals who had this huge idea of human rights. John Stuart Mill,
Yes.
being the leader of the pack, considered the head of liberalism movement. He and others, they were the ones who wanted to tamper with Indian society more.
Actually, the evangelicals, that is the people who wanted to Christianize India, and the utilitarians, which
Yes.
means John Mill and John Stuart Mill,
Right.
they allied together.
Yes. So the alliance of Christian missionaries
Evangelicals.
and the what we would today call the liberal left, that alliance has been there since mid 1800s.
Yes.
So the alliance today also of those people is not a coincidence. Isn't that interesting?
Yes,
Yeah.
interesting.
And in fact, the conservatives who just want to make money, they were just basically capitalists who wanted to make money. They were not interested in all this stuff.
No.
That's very interesting.
And appreciative of India.
Yeah, we're appreciative of India. We have a wrong impression that that the East India Company was all evangelism.
And in fact-
that's because our people are not well read.
Yeah.
And you know, you make a fool of yourself if you make a statement like that.
In fact, H.H. Wilson, when he went back as the first Bowdoin professor at Oxford, he used to keep in touch with Sen, I forget his first name. He was Keshav Sen's great grandfather. And he said that, you know, continue the demand for Sanskrit because your nationality, your identity is linked with Sanskrit, and you do everything that you can to frustrate this movement for English education.
So, you know, we have to understand a lot of things we blame on the left, it is our own stupid people who demand it and bring it in.
Yes.
Because, so this post-colonial also, because
Yes.
a bunch of idiots thought that they'll become important and become Gora Sahibs
Yeah.
and the next best thing to
Yeah.
being a white man is to think like a white man.
Yeah.
So it is our people who bring them in often.
But the encouraging sign is that we are now getting the capacity, the confidence and the determination to set at least part of our historical narrative correct. So now shall I tell you about my new project?
Oh, tell me about the new project.
So this is a absolutely fascinating project, at least for me. You know, the left historians, beginning with Mohan Habib and continuing all the way down Romila Thapar, etc. One important strand of their writing is to underplay iconoclasm. And you know, they try to minimize the extent.
Which means the Christian and Islamic habit and ideology to smash idols.
Yes.
That's what it means.
So
Breaking idols, burning idols, stealing
yes.
idols.
So they have tried
Murtis.
to underplay this.
Yeah.
And in this exercise, several Western historians have also endorsed their point of view. And I mentioned Richard Eaton. He wrote an article, Temple Destruction in Indo-Muslim States, in which he said over 1,000 years, at best 80 temples were destroyed. And two others, Richard Davis, who wrote a book, Lives of Indian Images, in which he said that, you know, before the Turks came, this was already the established practice in India, and the Turks were only following established practices, and then Sheldon Pollock, among others. So, I started examining this, and I said that in most of their sources and most of the sources they cite, the Hindu sources are mostly missing. After all, if so much havoc was being done to the Hindus, there must have been some record of it somewhere. The Hindus may not have written it as modern historians, but they have recorded their experience somewhere. And I started looking for that evidence, and then I discovered that a better way to tackle this subject is to find out what happened to the icon, the statue, the murti. Because the temples were huge structures. It was not possible to protect them. But the murtis could be protected.
Right.
So was an attempt made to protect the image,
right,
the murti. And I found some scholars have done work on this, but I found how carefully the Hindus tried to protect their deities and what extent they went to protect them. And so many centuries later, they try to reinstate the images in those very temples. Now, for example, there was a Mahalakshmi temple in Kolhapur, and that was a temple which was built around the 9th century, but there is evidence of Shakti, Mother Goddess, being worshipped at that site earlier. So suddenly when these attacks on the south begin, then we find that the image is not there in the temple. And the temple begins to be used as an office of the local administration, etc. And the image has gone. Then Shambhaji too, he was the ruler of Kolhapur. And many kings used to come to that site, to the temple, and they left inscriptions that we've come here, paid respect to Mahalakshmi and given a grant and all. So those inscriptions are there on the temple walls. So this Shambhaji II of Kolhapur, he says that now we are in a position to reinstate the idol, and they start looking for the idol, and they find it in the house of a devotee, and then the image is reinstated in that temple, and it continues to be worshipped over there today. So when you say that the Hindus did not record their so-called trauma over temple destruction, because they say so-called, they say it was engineered by the British because they did not want the Hindus and Muslims to live as one community. But the point is that from whatever evidence is available to us, we have to know how to look for it. A counter narrative can be prepared. And this is what I am trying to do. As many temples as I can get evidence of, to find out what happened to the image.
But when they say it was a practice of Hindu kings to also invade temples, and they would take the icon, the image, the murti, the implication that they want you to have is that they were destroying images, but actually they were relocating it, taking possession of it, and making their own temple in honor of it, right?
And huge temples.
Huge temples.
And in any case, it was hardly half a dozen cases.
Right.
After that, you can't.
It is more a theft of murti than a destruction of
it's
the
an
murti.
honor.
It's an honor.
That you also regard that murti as so
important.
Venerable.
You rather have it.
Yeah, rather so venerable.
Right.
And having so much spiritual power.
Right.
But in the other case that the murti is put on the steps of the masjid or wherever, and you trample upon it and go.
Minar, I've seen this.
It is very academically improper to equate the two as if there's no difference between them.
So you've done some very groundbreaking, controversial, trying to change the discourse in a very strategic way. I commend you for that.
Thank you so much.
Now I want to talk to you about my issues. I have taken on three kinds of opponents. First was Western scholars on their home turf. And then the Indian left, which is supporting them, and in fact the two working together. Now I'm finding a huge problem with the Hindu intellectuals.
Yes.
I'm finding there's jealousy. Their standard is not necessarily that good. If you do appear, like we are having these conferences, and a lot of people want to get in and give opinions, outbursts. Lack of rigor. So I'm finding that there's a large community of these people who go to sammelans and manthans and conclaves, but that really don't have a whole lot of research done. And it's more like op-eds full of emotion.
Absolutely agree with you.
You agree with that?
Absolutely agree. Many times when I started doing research, and I would meet some Western scholars, and they would say that you are so agitated about our writing and the left writing. Please give us the counter literature too, which we can read.
Exactly.
And there is no counter literature.
Exactly.
What has happened is that among the Hindu so-called intellectuals, slogans have taken the place of
the new government hasn't helped in that regard.
And,
I'm sorry.
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, because I'm finding that the old guard and people who've been very loyal to the party or loyal to some politician, they get these kinds of posts, and their standard of discourse is quite shoddy.
And what is surprising is that all these decades, a movement which calls itself a cultural movement has not done any homework on any topic that is in dispute. They don't. We have to turn to the left historians because they have done work on that topic.
So, and it's people like you and me who are freelancers.
We are freelancers.
We are not. So it's not like the Hindu organizations have helped us.
No, not at all.
I got zero help from any of them.
It is a tremendous weakness of the Hindu movement that they have not produced a body of work which endorses their point of view.
The body of work would come if they are good scholars. So they have not produced scholars.
So
and see, the interesting thing is scholarship is long gestation.
Yes.
Yes. Scholarship is not that okay. Let's have a event and let's call this guy, that guy.
Yeah.
See, there are a lot of people who hang around these places, one mailer to the next.
Yes.
And they are really not producing anything.
Absolutely. See, the point is that the desire to do research has to come from within.
Yes.
You have to be so convinced of the rightness of your position that you are willing to sacrifice so many years of your life to produce one worthwhile work. But there is no glory and glamour attached to the hard work.
Yes, but the thing is that it is not just this desire, but also competence.
Yes.
Okay, you need to have a certain intellectual competence. People are actually a lot of mediocre people. So there's a mediocrity in the IQ, and in basically their ability to hold a logical argument is not there. So, but they want the limelight without putting in the tapasya.
And the other point that I've noticed is that, today, for example, they have no idea of the intellectual work that is being done and which they have to refute.
Yes, the Purva Paksha of the opponent.
So,
we have a huge problem. Let's say we want to have 10 tracks, 10 panels on the works of Pollock. We have a call for paper. We're willing to incentivize, we're willing to give stipends. Most of the typical Hindu type people haven't read it, don't want to read it, but they're full of opinions.
So what I told one of them, I said that you are aware of Irfan Habib, etc. But the point is, what about the next generation of Western scholars who are continuing the work of these people?
That's correct.
So I said that the second generation of left scholars in India may be opting out of this ideological battle and doing hardcore research on purely academic small themes. But there is a new generation of Western scholars who produce so much work. Don't you think you have to counter that?
Yes.
But they don't even know the names.
Because there's laziness, there's incompetence, they're not well read, and they're more interested in quickly getting in the good books of the political establishment to get up.
No, and just because...
And there's a lot of desire to poach and plagiarize and pluck ideas from here and there, write a new blog, write an article. I face that all the time.
I don't see much evidence of their writing. What I feel is that they want to just capture some post.
Yeah, but I see a lot of things are right. The same people who come and praise and are very happy, then they go off in their own name without giving any reference, copying the same thing, and in order to get ahead in a very knowledge-starved political structure, Hindu political structure, very, very knowledge-starved, research-starved. So there are people who want to fill that vacuum, get ahead. So this is a problem.
But I'm really surprised at how the Hindus have become so enfeebled intellectually.
Yes.
Because my study of history shows that even under the most adverse situations and adverse circumstances,
Hindus were dynamic.
They were dynamic.
Yes.
They knew how to handle every situation.
Yes.
And to preserve their identity or their culture, what they regarded as their culture or their heritage. They were conscious of it. And but now I find enfeeblement of the Hindu mind, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I called it the moronization of the Hindus.
So
the Hindu morons.
So intellectually there is that much awareness is not there.
So we are developing a future Swadeshi Indology series, a series on refuting these historians that need to be refuted. So we want to go beyond Pollock. So we can pick Romila Thapar, we can pick Irfan Habib, we can pick their students, we can pick a certain school or a couple of schools of thought and have call for papers and encourage new young scholars to take that on. Do you think that's something interesting?
Yes, certainly.
You think there's there's
because you have made so much contribution
yes.
to writing a narrative.
But what I'm saying is, let's say we want to create scholars, and we want to have a targeted topic. So we want to get the best brains of young historians in India, political thinkers in India, young people, and we want to have a focused approach. So what are some of the targets of research that are not being done that you think are very important?
No, there is so much research to be done on every topic.
Right.
But my own experience of all these decades in Delhi University and being part of an academic system is that I don't find any young scholar who's beginning her or his research willing to touch these topics.
What are the ones?
No, any of these topics which should concern us as a civilization and as a culture.
Give me a few
like
big
talking
ones.
About iconoclasm, for example.
Okay.
Okay. Then what, I can give, I have to think, but there are so many that one can,
See, my style has been pick.
And they will not have the courage to, take on people like Romila Thapar.
Okay, that's my style. My style is to go after
question,
them.
Because the point is that in the universities, all the professors
who trained by them
are the ones who are going to sit for their interviews for the jobs.
Right. And
so if you stand out, then you're off with your head.
They're part of that parampara. So see, also the new government doesn't understand the internal politics and dynamics of how these institutions work. That there's a whole parampara being built of these leftist historians, and just planting a few mediocre Hindu guys in there is going to do nothing.
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because the point is that you have to have an agenda, you have to have people with ideas, you have to have people who have done work.
So we're going to do a conference on taking back Tamil Nadu from the Dravidianism.
Yes.
And we got archaeological evidence, we have Nagaswamy professor working with us. So we're going to put in a lot of linguistic, archaeological, historical evidence to refute the Dravidianism. That's a conference we're going to do.
Yes.
We're going to do another one, Agamas.
And in that, can I just say one thing? That the missionaries had a very important role to play.
Of course, they still have. They're still very active. Another one is on Agamas, because Agamas have been ignored and the largest body of Hindu texts. So we're going to do one there. Then we're going to take on some Indian, rather than Western, we're going to take on some Indian historians, a group of them, and the type of names that you mentioned are on our target. We want to do something on India's national security threats as a result of these foreign breaking India forces, that as we call them. So we're going to take that on. Then there is on economic theories from Indian traditional sources like Arthashastra, economic political theories, and their applicability today. Like Professor Vaidyanathan writes a lot, so he's on our advisory board. He's going to take the lead on that. And we're going to think about Vedic environmentalism. What are some of the Vedic practices that could be of use today, as opposed to the chemical-based economy we have. So these are some of the things we're doing.
Each one of them is so important.
Yes, it's a huge amount of work.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're not going to get existing scholars who've done a lot of research.
You'll have to find, really find.
You got to invest in multiple year projects.
Like a needle in a haystack.
No, but we're not just finding. It's like planting fruit trees that will bear fruit many years from now. So that's the work we're trying to do.
Thank you.
So,
and wish you all the best.
Yes.
That.
So I just want people to know, so that they don't confuse. Meenakshi Jain is a very different person from her sister. Who's she's another well-known person. So she's attacking me all the time. All the time for no reason. And kind of a crazy attacks. For if I were to give her the importance, Sandhya Jain is the person I'm talking about. If I were to give importance, it just feeds it. Frenzy. It's like obsessiveness. So I ignore it, and then about after 8 or 10 or 20, one post after the other, it depletes. Or somebody else comes and tells her to shut up. But then, and she's quiet for a year or two, and then some bug comes up, and then she just goes on. So people really think that she's gone crazy, and I also kind of tend to agree with that, because there's no logic to this. So I just want people to know that Meenakshi is a very different person, a very level-headed, cool-headed, rational person who's produced a lot very quietly, and not to mix up the two. And so don't put out a lot of comments on the discussion board just because Sandhya is a problem case, because Meenakshi is not. So I just want to clarify that.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing this.
Thank you so
and,
much.
And hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
You participated in our Sheldon Pollock conference, presented a wonderful paper, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah, thank you. To help me, you can do two things. You can go to the subscribe button on my YouTube and subscribe. We need more subscribers there. Secondly, I get lots of emails on people saying, how do we donate? How can we help you? You go to rajivmalhotra.com or you go to infinityfoundation.com and you can hit the donate button. You can donate in dollars. There are different ways mentioned. If you want to donate in rupees, there is a column called Infinity Foundation India, and you click that and there are instructions on how you can donate in India.